know that we have been talking about the things that can bring the most rage and frustration and grief and struggle and shame in your life. Things like money, things like sex, things like death. And at the same time, we've been working toward lifting up a spirit of abundance and generosity. We've been moving toward achieving healthy intimacy, and we've been aiming to live your life with a calling and a purpose in ways that bring freedom and grace into your whole life. These are like hinge points. These things are somehow they're where life bends, and our soul can either get caught up in this spiral, or we can be lifted up to peace and wholeness. Now, I am sure if we made a list of those hinge points, those deepest things that are real stuff in your life, you could come up with a fourth one, a fifth one: health, parenting, all those things. There's enough worries to go around, but today on this fourth Sunday, we're going to wrap all those other things up. The health, the parenting, we're going to wrap up time that no one has enough of, responsibilities that everyone has too much of. We're going to wrap up those expectations that you have for yourself, wherever they come from, and those expectations that everyone has from outside of you that wear you down. We're going to add in politics, family, maybe mental health, addiction, all the real stuff that sits so heavy on your chest. When you wrap all that together, there's only really one word that talks about all of it, and that's stress. Stress. Whatever the cause is, however we work to resist it, there's just this thing. There's a cloud. It might be a bad air for you that we breathe right into our life, sometimes right into our souls, and we receive that as stress. And of course, this isn't just our life. This isn't just modern living. People in Jesus' day, they had plenty of stress. We don't use that word in the Bible very often, but they stressed about whether their goat was going to get eaten by a wild animal. They stressed about whether a Roman soldier was going to knock in their door. We don't share those same anxieties, I don't think, but we do spend a lot of money on fences and door locks, things like that. First century Palestinians, they worried probably more than today. They worried all the time, again, about violence against women, even more than today. They worried all the time around stigma of disease. Somehow that idea of being sick got connected to being wrong, dirty. They had more worry in their lives about keeping honor in their community than American culture has ever thought about. And they certainly, they didn't have the same things as we do. No one had a mortgage back then. I don't know who invented that. We can punch them in the face when we want. They didn't have to deal with processed food or advertisements or billboards, or they didn't have to deal with road rage. I mean, maybe the high occupancy Camel Lane got a little busy once in a while, but life was different. They certainly did not have to live with the pace of life that we live with today. To be fair, they didn't have the tools to face the pace of life that we do today. Humankind has invented so many tricks to try to solve the problems that humankind has created. And if we go way, way, way back to the beginnings of this process of solving the problems that we create, one day, thousands of years ago, someone had the idea for the first time. It might have been God or Moses or some nameless person. Someone said, how about we do a day of rest, a whole day, one whole day. Some people said, that's crazy. How are we going to farm? How are we going to do this? How are we going to clean this? How are we going to keep this? Other people said, brilliant. I love it. I need rest. I've always told you I need rest. So they started with that idea, and they sanctified it, and they wrapped it up with prayer and worship in some places. They came up with great ideas on how to recover in that day. They came up with some ideas about what counts as rest and what counts toward helping toward burnout. They shaped their whole culture, religion, food, even city planning, like how cities are built, where roads are built. All this around making it holy, not just for yourself, but for the whole community. And they said, let's call it Sabbath. And that idea of Sabbath, it stuck. At its best, Sabbath is this focus on resetting yourself to the rhythms and the dreams you have for a good life. At its best, it's a gift. At its best, Sabbath is more than rest. It's more than family and church. It's more than catch up with the chores that didn't get done on Saturday. At its best, Sabbath is about resetting your own compass and the community's compass away from stress and toward healing and grace and peace. But no idea goes unspoiled. So over time, Sabbath became programmatic. It became legalistic. People looked for ways to cut corners. And for all the hopefulness there, it rarely seemed to move the human spirit away from adding more and doing more and expecting more. Rarely did it help us go to slowing down or letting go. So by the time Jesus comes around, the attitude wasn't a whole day of rest. The attitude was a whole day of rest? Are you kidding me? But Jesus was radical. Jesus was radical by trusting Sabbath, not about the rules that he'd grown up with, more about that holy reset, that value of just starting fresh. And I think he was inventive to take that idea of reset and to embed it into the purpose of everyday life, to embed that into all the way we live, not just on one day, but through our life. One day, great, but what about your stress on Monday morning? Let's say you're great. Imagine that you could pull off a Sunday Sabbath with the best of them. And then you wake up on Monday, and it starts out, you know how Mondays start out, whether it's a bad night of sleep, whether it's you get that text from work at 7:30 in the morning, there was that stuff on there. Already by the time you're driving somewhere, it feels like you're never going to catch up this week, and something falls apart when you get there, and your coping mechanisms that you really believe in them, but they never work. They never really work. No matter what television you watch, whatever you eat, there's no way for you to do everything that's important, much less fun, and then you go through the week. That's just Monday. So how'd that Sabbath work out for you? Because eventually you get to this weekend and you trade in this stress for these burdens. You trade in this exhaustion for a new set of responsibilities. And eventually your spirit just cries to the wind, is there any way off this roller coaster? To which Jesus says, yes, there is. There is a way off this roller coaster. I have a way off, a way of rest for your body, for your mind, for your soul. If you walk beside me, like just attach yourself to me, we'll walk together. If you follow me, take on my rhythm, we can get somewhere. Sounds almost too good to be true. Now, the key line in the song I just sang, I'm so tired of being tired. But Tom Petty never slowed down. Just a few years after he wrote that song, he kept going too fast, and he died. Another piece of art that displays this, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Have you read it? A few of you, have you seen the movie? There's this one scene, once in a while, a movie can do justice to the book, and usually through just one scene. There's one important thing, and the director gets it just right. There's this scene where Mancini's one of the characters in the home for people with a lot of mental struggles. Some of it's just stress, some of it's other disabilities. But at some point, he doesn't talk much, but at some point in this big group, he just backs up against a wall, and all he can say is, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired. He just says it a bunch of times. He's tired of the abusive power from Nurse Ratched. He's tired of being stuck in this place. He's tired of there being no compassion in the world around him. He's tired of just being an object with no real alternative. He sees a hint of distraction in McMurphy, but that's not a savior. Eventually, Chief has this power, this grounded power to escape, but it does have a whiff of escapism when he runs away. And so Mancini, some of us are like him, just pressed up against a wall. I'm so tired of being so tired. I don't see a way out. What would it be like to follow Jesus instead and find real rest? And we know celebrities get exhausted, athletes need rest days. We know that people get sick when they don't slow down. But still, everyday, regular American life, it just stays on this relentless track to do more, expect more, demand more. It's almost impossible to imagine what it would be like to accept Jesus' invitation to do something different. It's almost impossible to imagine what it would be like to move away from always trying to catch up to taking control of your schedule and building your resilience and prioritizing your recovery and enjoying your rest and building your hope for a life of peace. In some ways, I am the last person on earth who should give you ideas on this. If my wife is watching right now, she's like, that's what you're preaching about? Wow. Wow. With a straight face? Yeah. My nature is to move and move fast. I do things fast. Some of you know I talk fast. I used to talk a lot faster, but sometimes I get going excited. I do things fast. I expect other people to be fast. We're going to go do things. We're going to accomplish things. My nature is to move. It's very common for me, people like me, to live with this undercurrent of anxiety that takes over our emotions, even so that it takes over my calendar, it takes over my sense of peace, it takes over my spirit. The fact that I know this problem and I know the solution, and it's still so hard for me, makes me a lousy messenger to talk about Sabbath. Or maybe we're in this together and we need to figure something out, how to slow down. 1 Corinthians 13, what was that, 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago. You know how it starts. You know how this, you've all heard this. Love is patient. If you were to describe love, is that the first word you'd use? It's a surprise, really, when you slow down. Patient. Patience is something you can practice. Patience is something you can practice even as normal of an experience as waiting at a red light. I can go 20 or 30 seconds before I pick up Facebook at a red light. At least 20 seconds. 15, maybe, sometimes. I can practice. When I'm in Costco and I'm choosing a line, it takes some work, but I can practice not doing the calculus to find the shortest line. I can just go to the closest line and accept that. It's hard, but I can get there sometimes. That's Sabbath rhythm, just a teeny pause in your day. Here's the next step. Try being present in those moments. If you can practice patience, then maybe you can practice breathing while you're in those moments. Just paying attention to yourself, to your heartbeat, but also to things outside of you that might give you a hint of joy or respect. Some of those days when you are the most exhausted and running and frantic, those are the days when you get in line at Costco and you're going to see the little girl dancing in her princess costume. And it's going to brighten you up. If you can do that, here's a hard one. Is it possible to drive the speed limit? No, okay. Is it possible to stop at stop signs? That's hard too. Okay, how about this one? What if you could just allow yourself to notice that empty feeling that drives you to drive so fast? I'm not asking you to change how you drive. Just notice, why are you so anxious to get somewhere? Are you late, or is it something else? Is it just power? Is it something else? If you gave yourself a little room to feel that emptiness, I promise you'll realize your soul is not calibrated to rush everywhere. That feeling of rush comes from something else. And what could happen if you could turn that off, or turn that down at least, like a dial? What if you could start to name it and say, oh, that's not me. That's not what I'm meant for. And you could dismantle that power. Could that allow you to be present and patient and loving? Now, that's a long way from 24 hours with family, with worship, without a phone, without electricity. That's a big ask, 24 hours. It's a long way from a whole day of just not having an agenda, but to live into love. But you can come up with other steps to take on, to lower that idea of stress in the life toward a Sabbath-rich lifestyle. Here's a fun, this is your homework. Go sleep more. How about that? I challenge all of you to sleep 15 minutes more a night. Is that the easiest church challenge you've ever heard? Don't feel ashamed if you don't do it, but what would happen? Less irritability, you know that. You know that if you have a teenager at home, they don't get sleep, irritable. You know that if you have you at home, everyone knows it about you too. If you don't sleep, you get irritable. If you get sleep, your emotions are more genuine. They're more real. Would that help you even a little to connect back to your real identity and sense of meaning? Here's a harder one, so countercultural. Can you remind yourself, just once a day, put a little alarm somehow on your day. Say, when I see a robin, I'm going to remind myself that this world is so designed for distraction and addiction because someone is making money off of our stress. The world is so set up. We have armies of people out there whose only purpose is to take you away from yourself, to take your attention, to take your money. So give yourself some grace when you get caught up, and then try to return to that idea that you could be connected to a better way. Now for the hardest one, my last one. What would it be like to put Sabbath moments at the top of your list and to shape the rest of your day and the rest of your week around that? When you sit down and do your schedule with your family, short-term, long-term, when you start your day at work and you plan it all out, what would happen if you started with the breaks? If you said, I know that every hour I need to stand up from my desk. I know that every 2 hours I need to go see real sunlight. I know that every hour I need to have a drink of water. What if you programmed that in as opposed to letting them be the leftovers? What would it be like to shape your whole family around this goal of resetting for wholeness and peace and make all those other decisions based on that? I don't know what would happen. It's hard. Seems like a dream. To pull it off would be a miracle. It's a good thing we believe in miracles. Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give your soul rest." May it be true.